I think I've traveled. I've gone to about 24 countries now. So
Oh, yeah.
So I got a lot to catch up with you. All right. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Got 12 of us on here so far. I know there's about 3 or 4 people that notified me they won't be able to make it during the live time. They'll join us in the recorded. And I appreciate everybody coming on here a little later. And I am figuring out how to edit the video so that we don't have the long pauses. So hopefully in the recordings, I'll be able to get to that, especially on the YouTube version of it. And is everybody kind of watching the class live and then going back and rewatching the video while they paint? Is that kind of, yeah, I see a lot of
Yes,
heads
yes.
there. That is so cool. All of last year, I really just fought teaching on Zoom. I just didn't think it would be the same. I couldn't really see it. It felt so strange. And I love it. Well, the commute's fantastic, and warm, fresh coffee whenever I want it. And I love having everything here and a little more control. And then also, of course, being able to show you guys on Photoshop and everything else. So let me grab some of the notes that I sent. Everybody get an email from me? Denise?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
I got an email from you, Michael, and I have a question. I tried to access the second video for coloring in the painting, and it was on YouTube, I think, and it said something about it just had a name, Leslie or something, and it
had
I
been
don't know what it is.
private. So if you try that again, I think it should work. I reposted a better link. Again, I'm still learning about all of the privacy settings for everything. And I don't want to just put the classes out there to the public because, you guys have paid, you're spending the time. But I kind of haven't quite figured that out yet, but I will. Good morning, Stacy. All right. So just kind of quickly as we're coming in, just wanted to do a little bit of a refresher, kind of a rehash of what we've been going over. I appreciate everybody's emails and notes that you're sending me, both about what you like about the class and what I could do differently. And I have gotten a couple notes that it's kind of like trying to drink from a water hose. There's a lot of information coming at you. And I completely understand that. I get so excited. I end up teaching 2 lessons in every class. And but that's the great thing about being able to go back and watch the video again. So for some of you, taking notes and just kind of really paying attention is really beneficial. For others of you, you can paint at the same time or draw or sketch or whatever it is you're working on. And here's the thing, is a lot of this information for the absolute beginners, some of the information isn't exactly for you yet. You're going to hear this information, a couple times. And as you get better, and I bet you I could ask students that have been with me, you're like, the 3rd time you heard it, oh, now it makes sense. And it's not because I explained it better or differently, which hopefully I did, but it's because you had got the foundational information rooted into your brain, and now you're ready for kind of those next steps. So what I've been doing the last 3 classes, I can't believe we're already on our 4th class, is what I've been doing in the last 3 classes is giving you ways to approach your designs and your paintings so that you are practicing design and composition in a simplified way, so that you're not having to do an entire painting to learn from it. You can do these little notan and value sketches and study them and see, do they have a nice feel and a nice flow to them? You can do, the quick starts on the painting and, step back and go, yeah, this looks great. Or, God forbid, my horizon line is crooked. And, there's ways to fix things quickly and somewhat painlessly. Like I say, it's much easier to throw away a 15-minute sketch than it is a 15-hour painting. So if we can get the big fundamentals, what I call the building blocks of our paintings, you guys should write that down, building blocks, because that's what we're going over. And that's what we're going to learn more about in the second half of class today. And that's what I want. I want you to think it's kind of painting for dummies, without putting you guys down at all. It's what is the basic parts that we're going to put together to build up our painting. If you are a brand new painter, or let's say you've never painted and you're looking at these beautiful paintings in galleries and in books and magazines, you have no idea how these artists approached it. Did they just start painting one leaf and then the next leaf, one blade of grass, and then the next blade of grass? It would just seem so daunting, and there's no way to approach a painting. So what I'm hoping is to show you how we can approach paintings, even if it is kind of a complicated subject matter that you're choosing, but how do we break it down into its most important parts, the building blocks, and then build from there. So even if you are looking at photorealistic paintings, for the most part, they're starting it very basically, and then they're just building more and more complex shapes. So what we're going to be doing today is a different way of starting a painting. So not to throw too much of a wrench, but we're not going to be doing the wiping away system today. We're going to be doing, well, I guess something I call building blocks way of painting. And so this will be the second way to approach your painting. That's going to work, again, for some of you better and for some of you not as well. And again, I approach my paintings on a painting by painting basis. As I'm starting them, I'm kind of like, which way is going to work better for me? Is it, nice big shapes and clean lights and darks so that I can do the wiping away and just, nice big organic shapes? If I have more difficult shapes, possibly like a city scene or something like that, I may do the style I'm going to teach you today. And it's kind of a more instinctual way. I think probably most of you do it this way, where you kind of draw in your painting and then fill in the shapes. But what I'm going to show you and talk to you about today is building it by going with very much simplifying, like we did with the wiping out method, looking for our biggest shapes. And here's another thing when you're writing down building blocks, it's shapes, not objects that we're looking at. If you take only that from this painting class, shapes, not objects, that's huge. It really, really is. When they say learning to see like an artist, to a huge part, that is what we're talking about, is we're no longer trying to see objects. We're seeing big shapes. We're breaking those shapes up by values and or colors and things like that. But we're trying to find like shapes. So if you saw the reference that that I shared of the, are you guys seeing the farm scene on Adobe, on my Photoshop? Let me pin me. So that, there's a lot of information going on. There's a bunch of trees, there's lights and darks, there's gradations in the grasses, all these things. But if we squint our eyes at it, you can see how the shapes of the dark shapes all kind of simplify and merge. All the big light shapes kind of simplify and merge. We're no longer seeing all these rows. We're no longer seeing this little tiny shaded line and everything. We're just seeing a big flat shape of this grass. I mean, we can even ignore this green here in the front, and we see this big, almost like cut paper shape. Or if we squint our eyes at these trees, really squint, you're looking through your eyelashes, or maybe just taking off your glasses is enough. And these trees become one big dark mass, right? It simplifies them. We're not having to worry about all these little branches and leaves. That information will come. You have to have faith in yourself that as you go from big, basic building block shapes to little shapes, we're providing ourselves a roadmap so that we'll be able to find the detail. And that's as much or as little detail as you want. You could leave it very impressionistic and have big, bold, beautiful, juicy brush strokes, or you could get to almost a photographic rendering where you're getting in there and getting all the leaves. That's up to you. But we're going to approach it the same way. We're looking for like values, like colors, and we're breaking those into big abstract shapes, kind of amoebic shapes. So instead of a lot of times when I say shapes, people instantly think circle, square, triangle, and it's not like that in painting very often. Sometimes those shapes exist, but mostly it's this big abstract shape of this dark thing. And then we'll come in, after we get that in, then I can come in and break this dark shape into light shape on top. See that? Nice and basic attached light shapes. So now this big dark shape has been split into 2, possibly 3 shapes. And that's how we're going to build our paintings today. That makes sense? If I can just see a quick nod for everybody. It seems rudimentary and it's a little bit difficult to grasp in the beginning, but I want you to be able to begin to see reality like that when you want to. You're going to be able to switch your brain from seeing objects, from going mountain, sky, cloud, tree, 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 2 silos, tree, 1,000 million grasses. We don't want to see that. We want to see there's a nice dark undulating shape back here, a much lighter, cooler shape that makes up the mountain back there. And the great thing is, if we just get these shapes and their values into the right places, they become objects to our viewer. Okay. And so when you go out plein air painting, or you're out painting, or if you just want to go out and observe nature, that's a great thing to do. You don't always have to be painting. You can just go out and observe and try to do the mental shift of how would I paint this? How would I draw this? How would I break it down into its simplest shapes? When I'm looking at this very complex, very involved scene, how can I simplify it the most? How few shapes can I break this into to get it so that it's approachable? We're not going to leave it simple, simple, simple. We're just trying to find a way into it that's approachable, that gives us the foundation or the building blocks. Again, can I get a quick nod if this makes sense? It is tricky and it is a mind switch. One of the things that I like to do is, let me grab a little paintbrush here, or maybe this pencil, get a bright color. And I think I had maybe mentioned this before, is I like to see, let's say, this great big shape here. As one shape. This, and actually it could be all of this because it's all dark, right? As one shape. I probably wouldn't quite do it like that because it's got a lot of information. I would probably just break it into this piece. You see how much more approachable that is all of a sudden? And what I like to think of is those little kid puzzles where, you know, the farm scenes where it's got like 8 pieces and they're made out of wooden blocks and they literally have a handle that I could pick up. Boop, boop. And a handle in here somewhere, right? So 1 shape, 2 shapes, 3 shapes, 4 shapes, 5 shapes, 6 shapes, and I've kind of ignored the mountains. So, I mean, you could, you know, and then very quickly you can bring in some of this other information. But as soon as I've got these shapes, then let me go back a bit. Within this shape here, this tree shape that I was talking about previously. So I've got one big kind of amorphic dark shape. Then I can say, you know, there's these light shapes within that. So these kind of equal the light shapes. So then I can paint that on top of my dark shape. And then within those light shapes, after I've done that, this pencil's huge. Let me get to a smaller one here. I can get even into the lighter lights within that. And so you're just breaking your big shape into consistently smaller shapes. And that's going to go both in the lights and the darks. So that is one of the things they mean when they say seeing like an artist, seeing shapes, values, colors, not objects. A big reminder note. Remember we said, what's your light source? That's one of my big notes in my studio. My other big note is we paint shapes, values, and colors, not objects. Okay, so the good news about that is you don't need a special magic pine tree brush and a wheatgrass brush and a cat hair brush. And, you know, you can work with just your brush because we're just putting together shapes, values, and colors. Okay, so that's that. And I'm going to bring up my notes that I sent you because now that I've given you a way to, and today will be the second way, to work on our designs that we're building up and, you know, contemplating, we should probably learn a little bit more about what makes good design. I'm going to switch back to me. There we go. And oh, I know I'm in the wrong view. There we go, speaker view. So I'm just going to quickly go through the notes that I gave you. I put them both on the Facebook page and in the email I sent to you guys. These are the very rough fundamentals, but what these are kind of a good little checklist and a way to, you know, once you've gotten your design, maybe you've got your 3 value or 4 value studies done, you can kind of use some of these as a checklist to kind of say, am I following these guidelines or am I breaking them smartly, purposely? Because again, these are all just guidelines. I hate the word rules in art. It just doesn't work. I mean, as soon as you say you're an artist, you're automatically a rule breaker. So I want to embrace that and say, yes, great, do it. But let's break the rules smartly and with a reason, okay? This quote is something that I started the email with, is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. And I think it goes a long ways with all the little tiny paintings you guys have been doing and all the studies. And it is, the practice is not the means to the output. The practice is the output because the practice is all we can control. And I think that's really important to not become too attached to the end product. Of course, we want to make as good a paintings as possible. And it's wonderful to be able to hang them on our walls and share them with friends and family. But if you let go of that and just continue to focus on the practice, the education, the paintings will truly come quicker. They'll get better faster. And that's from Seth Godin. Um, all right, so these are the important aspects to consider when thinking about your composition. Main concept and abstract design. That's what we've been going over the last couple weeks using our NOTANs and value studies. So number one is find a concept and define your main idea. So if we think back to the farm scene that I just showed you with the road, it's basically a farm is my main concept, a rural scene. And then if, bonus points, write down your ideas about your paintings. I talked about Anton Pavlenko doing that and how quickly he was advancing by keeping, because it's so easy to get lost in the minutia and the details and too excited by little things. So if we keep track of our main concept and our main idea and make sure that everything is in support of that, it's much easier to tell one story than a long meandering story with 10 stories within it, one main character, one main plot. Number two, do several NOTAN thumbnail sketches to establish value distribution and design which best supports your concept. Three, map out your major shapes on canvas. So that's what we're going to be going through. And that's what we were doing with the wiping away method. But today we're going to do it in a drawing way. And so the major shapes on my canvas, again, that's kind of what I consider my roadblocks. I mean, my building blocks or my foundation. Paint in major dark values, avoiding detail. Again, we all get so excited about the details. We're going to avoid those for as long as possible. The details come, they just show up. We're going to build towards them. Paint in major mid and light value shapes, still avoiding detail. Refine your large shapes and model forms. And that's like I was talking with the grass or the plant trees. By modeling form, once you add in a second value onto the shape, onto the form, it begins to turn in space. It gives itself a light source and a depth. Remove unnecessary details and simplify where needed. And this goes back to when in doubt, take it out. If it's not helping, it's hurting. Okay, we don't have to paint what we see. Question what you see, please. Artistic license, artistic license, artistic license. I'm just going to take away the excuse right now. And I'll hear it, I'm sure, in the next couple of days. One of you is going to say, well, it was in the photo. That's not an excuse. I've taken that away. You have to have a reason for everything in your painting. Is it helping tell your story? Is it helping convey the feeling that you want?
Michael,
Yes.
I don't expect you to answer right this minute, but I want you to know that one of the things I'm wrestling with is that where you're saying paint the major dark values and the details will show up, and the mid values stay there as long as possible, are contradictions I'm struggling with.
Okay.
And I'm finding it very interesting. You don't have to answer now, but that's something that I would like to ask about.
Perfect. I will show you that today. That will be very well described in this farm painting that I'll start today. So that picture you have of, I believe it, I can't remember, is Israel behind you, is a great example of that. You've got your darks, mids, and lights in there. So that exactly is a great reference for that. But yeah, I will go over that, and thank you. And please, anybody that has any questions along the way, you can, I don't really see the chat bar there. I just pulled it up, but normally I don't see it because I'm in speaker view. If you have any questions, please just push your space bar and or take yourself off mute, and let's make today very conversational. I want to answer any questions as we're going along. I want this to be as clear as painting instructions can be. I hope you guys all had a chance to go and read Mary's blog. Mary was who was just speaking there. It is so neat for me. It's a real nice bonus that I can go and read Mary's thoughts and insights into what I'm teaching And it gives me a way to say, oh, I'm being clear there. Oh, that part needs a little more explanation, and maybe it had two interpretations and I didn't mean for it to. So any notes you guys are taking, any questions you have, again, please let me know so that we're as close to on the same page as we can be, because it's a very strange, and art is so abstract. I remember one of my teachers in college saying, think of the color red. And then he said, just know none of you are thinking about the same color. We all have different ideas of what red is. And it's like that. That's why I was always amazed by teachers who just lecture. A huge amount of my college professors were just lecturing, and they would use stupid excuses like, well, I don't want you to copy my style. But I found that the few teachers that I had that demoed and talked, it's not like I ended up painting like any of them, but it became a way to share. And if you guys are in this class, you're probably visual learners to a degree anyways. So, I'm going to say all these things, and then hopefully I will show you these things as well. And then you guys will go and create your own versions of those, and we'll be able to make sure again that we're understanding each other. And I'll have a couple weeks to smack you on the hands and hopefully set you in the right path. Just kidding, but not really. Where was I? Refine your large shapes and model forms, remove unnecessary details, and simplify where needed. And then there's a quick quote. No law or formula can be concocted by which good composition would always be assured. John F. Carlson. John F. Carlson is, his book on landscape painting is the one book you kind of have to own. John F. Carlson's Landscape Composition, I believe it's called. I may be wrong about that, but yes, right there. Thank you, Lorianne. Yep. It is, it's not an easy read. I always think I should just go and rewrite it for myself, like literally, because every page is great. I tell the story of the first time I read through that book, I highlighted the pertinent and important things to me. And there was, every page had a line or two highlighted. I've reread it enough times now that the whole dang book is almost highlighted. And that goes back to, I was ready for the information in different levels as I was continuing to read it. So it's a tough read because it's, it was written quite a while ago. Unfortunately, a lot of his paintings were in a fire before they had color photos taken of them. You can look online and see his color paintings. He's a better teacher than he is a painter. He was a great painter, but he's a really good teacher. Anyways, get that book. The other book I would suggest, or other two books, are by Kevin McPherson, are great introductory landscape painting books. One is Painting with Light and Color, which was actually the first landscape painting book I read. And it's short. It's a quick, simple read. And I had been floundering, attempting to do plein air painting without any lessons. I just kind of thought that's what you did. I didn't actually really realize you were supposed to paint, that you were painting from photos and from everything else. I just grabbed my strange setup, which wasn't even a, plein air setup. It was just my paints, and take them outside and find a park bench and make a big, looked like I was having a garage sale. And anyways, by reading Kevin McPherson's book called Painting with Light and Color, it made it very approachable. And a lot of the techniques he used in that is what we're going to be going over. And it is what, it was such a strange thing of kind of right after college for about 2 or 3 years, just painting on my own, I had a full-time job, just painting when I could. I was doing some illustration work, and just, I felt like I was hardly getting better. But after reading that book in about 2 days and practicing some of the fundamentals that he taught, he made it so much more approachable. And again, that's what we're going over here. It's a lot of what I just showed you on the Photoshop there, of just breaking it into its big value shapes, big color shapes. All of a sudden it was approachable. And then I was able to take that information that I was learning from painting outdoors and bring it into the studio, which was kind of a reversal, because I was taking how I was doing it in the studio and trying to do it outdoors. And in the studio, I was able to draw for hours, draw a very detailed, complicated sketch onto my canvas, and then just go in and slowly fill in all the details, right? It was more like a coloring book, a very complicated coloring book than it was painting. And then when I learned how to do it outdoors and how to approach it and how to build up using the building blocks, I now use that method indoors. And all of painting is not only easier, more approachable, but it's also much more fun. So anyways, Kevin McPherson's Painting with Light and Color for outdoor. And then he has his second book, which I own and haven't read all the way through yet, is called Bringing the Outdoors In, or something like that. I don't know if anybody has that book readily available. It's in my other studio. And I'll find that for you, but it's another great book. I like looking through the pictures because they're just quick reminders of how to make a painting approachable. I am missing one of the pages of my notes.
Michael, here's the book, Kevin McPherson's book.
Inside and Out. Perfect. Yes.
And this one, these also are my very favorite books.
Yeah, they're so approachable. He's such a nice, cool guy. I've got to paint with him a couple of times and met him a number of times. And we actually almost went to South America together to do some painting and teaching. Didn't work out, but he's just a really neat guy, a great teacher, very funny. If you ever get to see any of his presentations in person. Anyways, yeah, great book. I don't suggest very many painting books. I have a ton of them, but there's very few that have made real big impacts. And I like them to be kind of straightforward, kind of simplistic. I don't like being too much information just to be confusing. I think that painting is already hard enough that we should look to simplify it when we can. All right, found my second page of notes here. Design, often referred to as composition. Good design is key to a successful painting and is rarely found just lying there in front of you. Therefore, you must be mindful of how you structure and design your painting for it to effectively support your main concept. So there's just a couple things that, if you are underlining or writing in bold or you have a Sharpie, and that's main concept, big, building blocks, and simplify. Sorry about that, my phone is. And then I jotted down a couple things. Here are a few good principles to consider in the design of your painting, all right? Canvas format, always important, especially when you're doing your little sketches. I always say it's amazing how many times I've seen students doing little square format sketches. And then when I see the canvas, it's a 8 by 10 or, even an elongated canvas. So whatever, if you're doing, like I'm going to be doing a 16-inch by 20-inch today, which is a 4 by 5, 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 5 is 20. So it's a 4 by 5. So when I was doing my little sketches, I would just be doing 4-inch by 5-inch sketches. So I don't have to do full, or I could do 2 by 2.5 little tiny thumbnail sketches, right? So that's what I suggest for you. If you're doing, a 9 by 12, that is a 3 by 4. So just break it down. You don't have to do big sketches. Your value studies can be very small and simplistic and easy to approach. And anyways, focal point and your area. Again, where do you want the viewer to look? What's the important character in this? So do you have lines that are kind of guiding you to it, or is it a contrast in value, color? What is it that you're using to guide the viewer? And I guess that is a lot of what design and composition is and it's basic, is how do I control the viewer so that they're reading this story, my painting, my poem, in the way I want them to read it. Your no-tan study, or just even when I'm looking at this farm scene, I'm squinting my eyes, looking for those lights and those darks. Directing lines. I'm gonna switch back over again, share screen. So this painting in a way, or this image right now, has a lot of great things. You know, this kind of these little silos back here, I really, you know, they kind of make a nice focal point there. The two really light objects against dark objects. So I've got a strong contrast. They're also the only inorganic straight edged objects in a very natural scene. Well, farm natural. I do have rows and things, but these are actually straight, crisp, hard edges. Also, what's really neat is look at these lines. I'll go ahead and use my pencil here. I got one line coming here, one line coming there. The road, of course, look at that road. If I left that tree, which I'm not going to because I hate it, but that's a little exact. And that's actually why I'm taking that out, is because it's just directly above it. It's a very bad tangent. I've got this line here. I've got this line here. It's kind of like all roads paint to or lead towards Rome, right? Or go to Rome. I could even hint at a couple rows in here if I really wanted to, you know, beat it over its head. Pretty wild, right? I mean, and a line is created where two differing things meet. It can be dark and light, so that becomes a line. It can be temperature shifts. It could be value shifts. All these things can create lines. Lines don't have to be a road or a creek or something really, you know, and you can have very subtle lines. I could have just the grass slightly beaten down a little bit, like as if some kid and his dog have walked through there. It could be a broken path that my eye will connect and lead us through there. So I want you guys to begin to think about that as well. They don't have to beat you over the head like some of these are. They can be very subtle, but directing lines, groupings, flow and movement. You know, I've got this nice undulating shape. Maybe this line is a little too perfect. So maybe I would, you know, chop into my trees a little bit there just to make it a little more interesting. You'll see when I go through how I've cropped and edited this painting that I've got this big dark mass kind of right in the center of my image. And it's also, let me go back. I don't know. It's also kind of blocking something I really like. I like this doorway back here all the way through. So you got this entryway, these kind of lead you to it. And then I wanted to kind of open this up to get through it. And so I've got this big trees here. So you'll see how I think about things like that and try to resolve them. So that's flow and movement and also entrance point, right? So we have this great big nice entry here. But of course, it kind of leads us to this wall here. So we have this very obvious entry point of a road. Roads, paths, creeks are always going to be your most obvious. Fence lines, things like that. So you're also going to see how I edited that. In the beginning, I kind of liked this big, open, quiet space. But you'll see as I edit that I'm going to go, I think I end up editing it so it's like about there. So that this road actually does become an entry point. Space division, you know, is it very repetitive? If you know, a lot of times trees will end up growing. These represent the tops of pine trees that aren't there. But a lot of times forests do that, especially if they've been planted. You know, it's a regrowth forest, or fence posts that are just straight across the middle. Anytime I have a really inorganic grouping of nature things, I want to make sure I question that. Because like if these were pine trees that were all perfectly spaced like that, what do they look like? Teeth, right? And it becomes very, imagine if there was a third tree right here. It's just much less interesting all of a sudden, just to have this repetition of perfectly spaced things. So I'm constantly thinking about that. How can I change spacing for interest? How can I chop down trees? Sorry, view fit on screen. So that's space division. Also, let's pretend that this field somehow was split right here and also split right here. Let's say that the farmer had planted, yellow flowers here, red flowers here, blue flowers here, and then I've also got the field back here. That might look kind of nice. It's got this stripe. It's kind of got a flag kind of thing going. But what happens is the spacing, this to here, this space between here and here becomes almost the same as here and here, which is very close to here and here, which becomes very close to here and here. So I've got a repetition of spacing going back. So it would be, sorry, I keep doing the wrong one there. If that was split right there, so that this shape, this size, and this size are the same, I would probably lower this so that this area here is much bigger than this area, because big shapes want to come forward. So if I made, even let's say there's another field back there, it would be very small. All right. That happened a lot in your guys' paintings. I think I mentioned it a bunch of times. In that you guys had, those trees lined up. You had your horizon line with some trees, and you had some trees or water there. And then you had some bigger trees on the side here. You guys remember that? And then another tree here. A lot of people were putting, the furthest trees, making them the tallest, and the closer trees the smallest. And that destroys our illusion of space. This is interesting because these are pine trees, which obviously are much taller than these deciduous trees here. But if we compare these trees, the size here, versus the size of these here, versus the size of the deciduous trees back there, you see how they get smaller as they go into space. And that allows us, not only due to overlapping and how they're going up towards the horizon line, but also that size really helps us to tell where they exist in space. Okay. Graceful line. That is something I'm working a lot on right now. And I call it sexy lines. And that's just because I heard a painter that I liked a lot talking about that he likes to look for the sexy lines. And that sounds a little weird when you're talking about trees and stuff, but this is kind of got a nice, sexy curve. And, sexy could be, cars and everything else. It doesn't just have to be people. But I'm trying to find what's the line that is interesting. If this road did that, that's much less inviting. It's much less sexy. It might be kind of exciting as far as making my heart rate go up because it's very energetic. but it's not sexy. So if that was there, I might contemplate, you know, making it smoother. I was also thinking, like, let's say I got rid of this tree here and opened up this field. What if I actually added a road back there? It kind of hinted at it so that this road kind of went up, disappeared for a minute, and maybe just kind of reappeared to take us to the farm. I don't think I'll do that because I think the rows do that for me. And it wouldn't make sense for a farmer to dissect his rows in his field. You know, obviously the road probably goes back here where we can't see it. But anyways, looking for lines. Again, this line, this is kind of a swoop and then bam. And then down, down at an angle. And then it's got a weird kind of a counter angle over here, down, up. So I'm just looking at the line that's created between the sky and those trees. Right? It's interesting. It's got a lot of shapes, a lot of diversity, but there's a couple shapes in here that I don't find very interesting. A couple lines in here that I might try to break up and see if I can make them a little more interesting. Maybe this could come in a little bit so it's not just so big. But anyways, thinking about that graceful line, overlapping forms. Again, this big tree overlapping these trees back here, these deciduous trees, even though they're smaller, we know that in reality than these pine trees, but these pine trees are much further back. So they are smaller, you know, and they're also getting overlapped. So by overlapping our forms, these little trees can exist in my painting because they're overlapping these big trees back here. Shape variety, that also goes with kind of the line variety. There's a lot of times when, especially these deciduous trees, will just kind of start to repeat themselves as if they're all planted at the same time. Happens again, like I said, with the pine trees. I just want to, when things are the same, question them. Do they have to be the same? Is their being the same? Like, let's say it was lavender. So I got a row of lavender, and you know, lavender are those little, they're kind of planted, and when they're groomed, they kind of come out in these little kind of muffin shapes, I guess, right? So it is the same over and over and over, right? And that works. I want the same shape. I'm overlapping them. I'm changing their size. So in that instance, I'm describing something that is the same size. But if it was pine trees again that were all the same back here, I would question that. Say, okay, I can space them out. I could maybe get rid of, you know, one. I could make one taller, one smaller, any way you want to break up. So just considering that.
Michael?
Yes, please.
Just a question there. Would you consider removing that middle grouping of distant trees to expose the mountain behind it, perhaps?
Are you talking about these?
Yeah.
Good job. You got it. You're ahead of me. I'm going to show you what I did. In fact, you can see it right there, right?
Yeah.
So that is my edit number one. That was the first thing I did, was do that. The other thing I did was, well, let me just finish this. I'm almost done with this list, and then I'll show you how I use these concepts in my decision-making process. But yes, fantastic. Way to go. I don't know if you cheated and looked to the right or if you just came up with that. I'm sure you just came up with it, but yes, very right. And again, artistic license. It's not only a license to be weird and wear crazy clashing clothes and have strange beards. It also means change things, play God in your image, right? Move mountains, move trees, clear cut without worrying about the environment. This is your opportunity. Okay, so shape variety, abstraction. Everything in painting is abstract. That is the one thing. It's like that whole building blocks thing. I think that painting landscapes is almost more abstract than painting abstract paintings. Because all these shapes, like, when I broke those up, if I just, took away the image, wish I could go back to where I had all those lines, took away the image from there and just had those pink lines, it's just these odd, abstract, hopefully interesting, non-repetitive, sexy shapes that we are then going to go in and fill in. But yeah, think of the abstract shapes, yeah. And then simplifying masses. I actually should have had that at the top. But yeah, when you can, simplify for your own sanity and for the sanity of the viewer. It's amazing. The viewer will fill in so much information for you. It is amazing how many times when people see my paintings and look at them for a little while, they'll say something to the effect of, oh my God, I thought it was so much more stuff going on. I thought there was so much more information. I thought it was, painted so much tighter than it is, because their brain fills it in. We just have to give them some clues and some hints. And people's brains like to do some of the work for us. If you don't believe me, go and look at some of Raphael's paintings and the early Da Vinci, where they had the big dark areas, and our brain just fills in what's going on back there. All right, just as important as the what do we think about and what do we do, this is your checklist to take against your sketches before you get painting, or maybe as you're starting your painting. Avoid doing the following. Again, guidelines, not rules. These are not set in stone. I will not come around and give you guys bad marks if you're doing these things, if you're doing them purposely or it works for your painting. Centering the focal point. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and crop this. Boom. Now there is no guessing what is the focal point of my painting, right? It is right there in the middle. What is that, an 11-inch painting? So, oops, sorry. Let me blow it up. View fit on screen. So 5.5 inches over. Bang, that's the middle of my painting right there. And it's 7.5. So what's that? 3 3/4. So it's just below center there. That's the center of my painting, basically. So having it so centered like that is uncomfortable and boring. For some reason, when things are too centered, they become boring. Also, look at my horizon line, kind of. It's a weird one because it's undulating hills, but it's kind of the horizon line. Also is right in the middle of my scene. This one could work theoretically because, it's got this big mass of weight over here and then it's lighter and airier over here. My road is off center and it leads to a nice area. So if I simply took those silos, if I was stuck doing this, and I just moved them over here, already feels better as a viewer. Or let's do it even again. There. Doesn't that feel better than having them right in the middle, just a little off center? I'm also just gonna move everything a little bit over. Get rid of some sky. So now I've changed my horizon line a little bit there. I'm gonna even do it again. So there's so many, that's why I chose this this image, is there's so many edits I could do in this to make interesting paintings. And that's really a nice bonus. Sometimes the image, the photo that you take, you're like, that's the thing, that's the one design that's going to work. But in this, I have lots and lots of options. I find this very interesting and exciting over here. I could open up some of these, blah, blah, blah. Lots of cool stuff going on. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. Great. Okay. Centering the focal point, do not do that if you can avoid it. If you are centering it, have a good reason. Centering the horizon, I just showed you that too. Anytime you center the horizon to equal sky, equal ground, it just becomes flat, boring, and there's not a lot of movement. It also is confusing to both you and the viewer, because what is the painting about? This painting is very obviously about the farm and the fields. It is not about the sky. In fact, I could make it very obvious. I don't need very much sky for this painting because it's not about the sky as of yet. Dividing the canvas in half. So that would be if I got rid of this grass, just anything that divides anything in half. You don't want 50-50 values. You don't want 50-50 lights and darks. You don't want 50-50 warm and cool. You don't want 50-50 sky and ground. Just kind of run through the list quickly. And you can, again, just taking a quick photo with your camera, switching it into black and white is a great way to check it. I know a number of you guys, when I saw some of your paintings, the color version over the black and white or over the value study, that the values kind of became very secondary once you started adding color. A good way to test and make sure your values are still holding up and controlling, you know, what's going on is to take a black and white photo of it. Equal mass sizes, be careful of that. Again, that goes into the trees. Even numbers are odd or strange. So like even my 2 silos, maybe a 3rd silo, just slightly off. Let's see if that makes us feel a little better. I need to zoom in. I can't grab it with this. There you go. Doesn't that already feel a little bit better just having 3 versus 2? A lot of times 2 and 4 just has an odd feel. I don't know why odd numbers feel more organic, but they just kind of do. So if you have even numbers, it's not like a, you know, that's not such a pertinent rule, but just again, question it. You know, maybe 1 silo would be interesting. Maybe I change 1 silo into a more of a barn or a shed shape or a tractor or whatever else. Cropping the critical areas and creating tangents. Again, if we zoom in here, get rid of that guy. Right away when I was looking at this, oops, pixel, this tree splitting right down the middle of that. I just don't like that. Got to be careful what I draw there. But I don't like that pyramid of stacking. So I'm always kind of curious, you know, to make sure things aren't stacking right on top of each other. Like if I had this tree here and a power line right here and then a fence post here, it just looks weird. It happens in photos all the time where we get funny stacks and tangents. Let me zoom back out. It even happens, I need even a smaller pencil than this. Just be aware where, like, let's say these trees had a corner right there but the mountain's also right there on that corner. So I'm always looking for that. A lot of times there, people will paint like a cloud back here. And it just looks like it's smacking right into this tree versus making the cloud go behind it. So yeah, just if this tree ended right there at the same line as that, this one in fact does, right? You guys see that line right there? Boop. See how it almost, if I were to zoom in on that, you guys see that tangent? The tree ends right at the dark. It almost wants to feel as if it's holding this up. This thing that's actually way back behind it. So be careful of those. Just look for them. Be aware of them. Just make sure things aren't ending at there, because this tree, if these two trees, if this tree back here was lining up perfectly where it touches the edge of this big tree up front, I'm just going to take that tree back there and let it get overlapped. Because these two don't have anything to do with each other. They're not in the same space. This is hundreds of yards further back. So this tree can grow over the top of that tree without hurting its feelings. All right, perfect. Thank you guys for that. Quick nod if we're okay with all that information. You got the notes both on the Facebook page and there. And I wanted to go through those quickly. Already took an hour, so not so quickly. Now, very quickly, I'm just going to walk you through the edit I did in this. And this is what I'm, hoping you guys will do at home on your own with whatever way. If it's, cutting them up, if you have Photoshop or any kind of an editing software, you can do it that way. You can do it all through sketches, whatever way. But I want you to look at, this is a nice picture, and I've actually painted it fairly close to what's represented in this photo once before, only again to realize, man, there's a lot of changes I should have made. It's nice to revisit an image. Okay, so my first thing is, what is my main thing? Why do I like this? What is my main idea? So my main idea is, it's a farm. And there's a farm, farm structures going on back here, and we've got this sweet road that leads back to it. So inevitably, this is my main focal area, right? So this is kind of what my painting is about, is this farm. And this all helps tell the story of this farm. These trees help break it up and add interesting shapes and lights and darks, but it's about this farm, right? At least for me. You could choose anything you wanted. You could say, you know what, Mike, those silos are kind of cool, but I actually really like these stripes. So it's about here. So maybe you take this road and you aim it all the way over here towards these stripes, and maybe you clear out some trees here so you can get through, whatever it is. Okay. So for me, it's about that. Okay. But what don't I like about this scene? Right. And we already talked about one thing. I don't like that. I just don't like this V shape. I just didn't think it was very interesting. So how do I break that up? And I also want, this is my way in. These rows lead us back. And then I want to be able to keep going back into space. And how do I do that? I've got to open this up, right? I also, I really like these rows. I think they help tell the story, but they're too far over to the left. Because I want to edit and crop, I don't want so much open space. How do I do that? So let's see. Edit number 1. You can very quickly see what I did was I took out this tree and moved everything over. What did I also do? I cut down these trees and open that up. All right. And I also took off my foreground to about there. And because this tree went over, I was able to cut off there. Okay, so now all this area is gone. So that was my first edit. So I already think it's better. It's a little more interesting. I've brought things in. I've condensed things that are viable and interesting. My next thing, let's see, edit number 2, is I began to clear out some of this because it's nice that this is open, but we still don't really have a way to it. We've got this big wall of trees. So I've kind of cleared out a little bit so we can kind of get through. I've kind of trimmed some of these trees. I also decided that this tree doesn't actually help me at all, right? Even though I've gotten rid of this and this, I don't need that tree, so I can zoom in even further. I've now cropped off more, and I've started cropping out my sky because this painting isn't about the sky. It's about my farm. Right? All of you guys, this is not the right way. And this isn't even the way I would do it again. This is just the way I did it this time. Remember that art is just a matter of asking questions, realizing you have 1,000 possible answers, and choosing one and going forward, and then asking the next question and moving forward. There is no right or wrong. There's just the answers you've chosen. There may be better and worse answers. But again, if I gave this picture the same, original farm scene to 10 of my painting friends and said, you have to use this as your reference, edit it, change it, do whatever you want with it, come up with your own image, we would have 10 very different scenes, I bet you. Okay, so there we go. I'm zoomed in. I'm looking at the top, edit number 2, edit number 3. So very quickly I decided, well, what if, I don't want to be stuck to a horizontal format. What if I did a vertical format? So you can now see that it's, and the cool thing about Photoshop is I'm doing it to the size, 16 inches wide, 20 inches tall. This one is 20 inches wide by 16 inches. So even though I am editing it, I'm continuing to keep my sizes the same just by doing a quick edit, change size. So this actually kind of works. I actually kind of like this as this nice longer lead in. I would definitely want to do something here because look at this tangent now that I've done by how I edited my trees, right? All my trees just kind of have this nice shape, and it could work, but I think I want to break that up. Anyways, that I just wanted to make sure that I checked that, right? That I checked the horizontal. It's really easy for me just to turn my canvas upright. But you know what? I think I went back to, that's number 3, number 2, number 4. I went back to this. Let's compare here. What did I edit? Oh, I really moved over. That can't be right. Is that right? Yep. I just went and edited tons over there just to see what happens if I zoomed in. Do I go back? Nope, I stayed with that edit. Interesting. I kind of like that field over there, so I kind of miss it. I may have to reconsider that a little bit. But what I've done is I'm continuing to clear. I've now cut off the bottom area so that my road is now coming off the bottom of my scene. So, initially it was coming from the side. Now it's coming from the bottom. Whether or not that's good or not, you guys can decide. Kind of interesting. So that's edit number 5. I've also continued to clear out treetops, tried to make these a little more interesting. Now I'm kind of looking at that. I'm like, man, that sky is still a big, interesting thing. What if I brought in clouds that actually work with the scene? So I just, from another photo, actually this was a photo of boats. So there was a bunch of masts and things that I had to take out. But I also wanted to make sure, because my light source is going this way, right? From left to right, you can tell because the light's hitting all these objects on their left side. So the light's obviously coming from that way. So then if I'm going to bring in another element from outside, I have to make sure that the lighting's the same, right? On these clouds, the light's hitting on the same sides. Okay. I'm all for combining images and doing whatever you want, you know, but just make sure that they're existing in the same world. The sun is my light source here. So I only have one big major light source. So I got to make sure they exist in the same world. And then I went a little bit crazy. You guys, maybe some of you saw this, and I decided, okay, now I've got a pretty exciting sky, and I do have these interesting lines. What happens if I go ahead and bring in rows of flowers? I tried to look up flowers that exist in the fall because this looks like harvest time. I don't even know what these are. I feel like I went a little crazy. It's becoming a little too romantic and poetic, and I don't know, you looks like you could put some motivational saying on the bottom of this. So I will probably go back, but it is interesting now going through this whole rotation, remembering that I had the rows on the other side here, and I do kind of miss those. And also I would need to decide, you know what, maybe I just chop this whole tree down so that I can really see the rows and have a big opening there, or maybe I move that tree, I don't know. But that is the process that I go through when I'm making a successful painting. It feels like a lot of time. It feels like a lot of prep work, but it is so much better to be painting on a painting that you like the design, you like the composition, and you have made a lot of the big choices beforehand. So there you go. Let me go back to get off share screen. That was a very fast version of that. Did that make sense? Kind of just walking through different decisions and thought processes. And you even saw that like very quickly, I was like, wait a minute, I got rid of one of my favorite parts. You know, I kept telling the story, but I did lose those other rows, which I really like, kind of the contrasting rows coming in from the other side. So there we go. So what I want to do now is take you guys to the canvas and do some painting and show you how do I take a fairly complicated scene. There's a lot of stuff. There's, you know, 100 trees in there. There's mountains, clouds, roads. How do I break that up? How do I look for the big shapes? So if you guys have your references that you're thinking about, maybe pull those out and you can start to contemplate those. And I'm going to show you how I approach a painting using, instead of the wiping out, looking for the big shapes, my building blocks. Really quickly, here's some notes you can write down, just simple, basic notes on what we're looking at for the next part. So building blocks, and I also will call that the roadmap or the foundation of my painting. And the big thing, write this in all caps: simplify big shapes. And then what I'm going to do today is simplify big shapes into flat color, looking for shapes, not objects. All right, you don't have to write this all in big caps anymore, in all caps. Get rid of small shapes that don't matter. And they can matter eventually, but they don't matter in the beginning. Get rid of small shapes that don't matter. Squint to blur, to get rid of details, and to merge like colors and values. It will really help you simplify again. So the key is simplify. Simplify where you can. All right, anybody want to tell me what the big lesson for today was so far? Anybody?
Big shapes.
Big shapes, yeah. Big shapes.
Big values and
values. Shapes. Yeah, simplify where you can. And now we're gonna flatten those out. just in the beginning. We're just gonna.
Unnecessary details.
Yes, thank you, Natalie. All right, you guys. Let's take a 5-minute break. I'm gonna go ahead and move over to my canvas and make sure my camera over there is. Let me make sure I turned it on.
What you want?
Make sure that that's up and running. So yeah, go grab yourself some coffee, tea, whiskey, whatever you need. Carrie's got hers. And we'll get back at 10:50. And if you guys want to paint along, if you want to sketch along, feel free. If you want to just sit and observe, whatever you want to do. Awesome. Thank you guys for sitting with me for an hour and 15 minutes so far, and I'll see you in 5.
Darcy Brayton.
Hey, Darce. I'm teaching right now. I'll call you back after class. All right. Love it. Bye. I still see a bunch of empty areas, so give you another minute or two.
Michael, I just want to share something. I was in the museum yesterday and my editing eye is really starting to work. I'm looking at landscapes and thinking, oh, they should have taken that out, or they should have moved this over. So it's interesting. The more you look at it, the better your eye gets, and you start thinking about these landscapes in different ways.
Yeah, it's so great. I'm so glad to hear that. It's gonna completely change how you appreciate art. You're going to appreciate art on a different, deeper level. And the more you learn, the more you appreciate different aspects of art. And you're also going to start to have a better eye for other people's paintings, which means being a little more critical, which we can think is a little meaner. But I think, you know, because you're going to go and start judging other people's paintings and stuff like that, like you're saying. But it's to the degree of what would I do? How could I make this better? If I was painting this, what changes would I make to not only make it better, but to make it my own? And again, like that editing process that I just showed you, I had a 1,000 different ways to go about doing that. I could have made 1,000 different choices, both on subject and my edit and everything else. And none of them are wrong. They're just different. It's like a poem. Hopefully you guys all listened to the inauguration poet. Can't remember her name right now, Amanda. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful poem. It was fantastic. But I really did spend time, like I've listened to it like 4 or 5 times now and even read parts of it. And just the word choices that she did and the editing, you know, I've watched a couple of interviews with her. I don't know why, I just became infatuated with her. I just thought she was so amazing. And just the editing that she did and the word choices and the moving things around. And, you know, she was up even the night before, and how a lot of it changed after the deal with the Capitol building. And, you know, every day is different. We're a different person every day. So our choices are going to be different every day. So none of these, again, all these things that I'm talking about are just tools to help you make decisions, not tools to tell you what decisions to make. I've always thought that a good teacher doesn't tell their students what to do. A good teacher helps their students ask better questions. And that's all art is asking better questions. So in the beginning, I'm going to draw these big basic shapes. And my questions are, what are the big basic shapes? And then as I break it down, I begin to ask, how can I make this shape more interesting? How can this shape help tell my story? Then I start to break those shapes up into smaller shapes, the lights and the darks and the different things. How do I do that? And then when we get to color, okay, what colors am I seeing? What colors do I want to be seeing? What colors do I wish were there? And then we get to the edge quality, and what edges do I want crisp? What edges do I want softened? Which edges are important? So it's just questions, more and more, deeper and deeper questions. So hopefully I keep going over that. Okay, so everybody can see my painting surface now? Well, kind of. Is everybody back? I'm gonna pretend you're all back. I went ahead and laid out. I kept out the lemon yellow this time, just for simplicity's sake. I don't want us to get too bound up in the glowy kind of background colors, even though it's a fantastic thing. And you're more than welcome to do this however you want. If you would like to do this straight black and white, literally using black paint, white paint, awesome. What I did was I laid out my earth red. They're both looking very dark. And it looks like my colors are a little better now. I realized I had a filter on my camera, and that's why the colors were ending up so hot for you guys compared to what I was painting. So anyways, I took that filter off. The filter was to reduce glare. It's a polarizing filter, but it did seem to warm up color. So I'm going to do a test. And if everything ends up too glary, I may have to put it back on because the wet paint can be very glary. So the polarization filter helps take that down. But anyways, my white is slowly sliding down. I have to push it against the palette a little bit there. Anyways, the colors I chose today for my values and my sketch are earth red, which is a transparent oxide red, and ultramarine blue. Again, when I mix them together, they create a very, very dark color that I can go either warmer or darker. And today I could, in theory, just make even just one big dark pile. And then a lot of times I would do it with the wiping out, letting the white of the canvas be my lights. I did bring some white paint over. We'll see if I end up using it. I've got my reference taped up, hiding back here. And very quickly, I just kind of wanted to remind you, every day I wipe up my palette and I put it in this Tupperware. I really need to get a smaller one because they take up a huge amount of the freezer. But I just put my colors in there at the end of the day. Has a lid. It's just one of those acrylic painting things. And then this whole thing with the lid on airtight goes into my freezer at night. And my colors last a lot longer than leaving them out. Even my fast matte colors, this is a fast matte color, the earth red, and it's even still workable the next day after putting it in the freezer. So anyways, I just wanted to show you that. The other thing about this is when I'm cleaning up my piles at the end of the day on my palette, I'll end up with a couple really interesting grays and different colors. Got kind of a warm, light yellowy color, this kind of very light mid-gray, kind of a, I don't know what that is, clay, grayish brown color. And those are just from cleaning up my palette. And what I do is I just keep kind of like colors together. So I do end up with nice, interesting grays. I know I've talked about that before. Oh, and here's a green that I ended up with that I thought was very nice. Kind of a very organic clay, kind of earth gray green that I liked. So anyways, when you're cleaning up your palettes, you don't have to throw away all those paints if they're still in good shape. I just would take all my blues, put them together, and they ended up with a green. My whites were a little bit contaminated, so I cleaned those, ended up with a light yellow. Anyways, those are all colors that are very usable to me. In fact, when I go back over some of these paintings, like after I have this value and design, some of these colors are really helpful. So anyways, way to preserve paint. Paints are expensive. No reason to throw them all out all the time. And I really like coming into the studio with a clean cat palette, with clean brushes. It's kind of like walking into your kitchen to go cook and having all the dishes all over the counter and a big mess. And, you know, you have to clean the kitchen before you can start cooking. And it's just not very inviting. So having a nice clean workspace for me, all artists are different, but I like walking in and having my brushes clean, my palette clean, my paint's kind of set out. So then I would just take these out. That's what I did here. Take them out with my palette knife and put them on my palette, which again, normally is flat surface in front of me. But for you guys, I put them up here next to that so we can see them all in one scene. Any questions on that, you guys, or ideas? All right.
A quick one. Have you ever just tried the refrigerator rather than the freezer?
I never have. I'm sure it's better than nothing. I'm sure it works. It's funny though, because sometimes I bring that Tupperware upstairs because it usually comes up with me. You know, I grab my coffee and I grab my paints out of the freezer and I come up. And if I get sucked into the computer and start, you know, answering emails, an hour will go by, and then I finally decide it's time to paint. I'll come and open up that belt, open up that container, and this big whoosh of cold air comes out. It's really pretty funny. So anyways, I usually want to open that up right when I get upstairs, because it can take about 10 to 15 minutes for my paint to get activated, you know, or into a good working condition. And again, another option is if I don't have room in my freezer, I can actually just literally fill that box up with water, or just high enough that it's over the top of the paint. And the water makes an airtight seal over the paint, because they're oil paints, it doesn't matter. And then I just drain the water out the next day, and my paints work that way as well. Another great option, if you don't want to do all that, is a little saran wrap across the top. Just kind of, you know, stick it to my palette, put that over the top. Anything you can do to kind of cut off the oxygen. Another thing I do from time to time is I have linseed oil kept in a little thing with a nozzle here. Makes it a lot easier to deal with. And I'll just put a couple drops over my piles of paint as I'm leaving for the day. And that oil over the top, I just have to come and kind of dap it off the top. Also creates a seal. So there's a lot of ways to make your paint go further, last longer. The other thing you can do, in fact, is actually just adding a drop or two of your oil of choice, your painting oil of choice, linseed oil or whatever, walnut oil or whatever it is, any slow drying oil. And I can add a couple drops of that to my pile of paint the night before, you know, as I'm finishing up, whip it into the paint. And that also buys me some time. It makes the paint dry slower. So lots of options of ways to keep your paint active and going longer. Okay, so big shapes. Let me grab my notes. So I'm make sure I'm staying with, see all my complicated notes there. Building blocks, simplify the big shape. So I'm going to look at my reference, and I bet you guys can actually see the simplification almost better when it's really small like this on your screen. You see one big dark shape, another big dark shape, another big dark shape, one big kind of orangey darker area, a lighter area, and then the sky is really quite light. So one shape, two shapes, three shapes, four shapes, five shapes, six shapes is what I'm looking to break this into. And I could even be more if I want to bind this big dark shape and these dark shapes of the trees going across the background could also be one big shape. So I could actually get it down to 5 shapes. Does that make sense? All right. Now just a touch of paint thinner. Usually when I'm sketching with my paint, I want it just a little bit runny, but not drippy. I just want it kind of the consistency again of good ink. You know, it's always nice when your pen is just kind of sliding along. You're not, you know, pressing into it too hard. Some people like it more the consistency or the feel of like when you're drawing with a pencil, that lead has a little bit more of a drag, and that's going to be kind of up to you. And you know what? I am going to go ahead and tone this canvas just a little bit. That big glary white space there is, I'm just going to take my earth red, and that's it.
Michael, this is Kim. What's the strata that you're working on?
What's that?
What's your strata? What's your base? Is it gesso board?
Yeah, it's a board. It's on top of an old painting. I think that it's got white paint. I don't know if that's gesso on top. I'm having a kind of a hard time. I'm going to say that it's white gesso on top, but it may actually be an oil prime. If it's gesso, that means, and I painted on top of an old painting, that means that it was an acrylic painting. It's pretty smooth, so I obviously sanded it down. This year during COVID, I was drowning in paintings, and lots and lots of starts, lots of unhappy paintings, lots of paintings that I either just bailed on, changed my mind on, whatever it was. And so I went through and destroyed probably like 30 or 40, and then sanded down about 20 or 30, painted over those. And then I put the rest of them in boxes. Oh, it's not as tight as I thought. In boxes waiting for the summer months, or at least good weather, because they're going to need a lot of heavy duty sanding. And I want to do it outdoors. So I've got a lot of surfaces to, not sure why it's moving around in there. Dirty towel, you see my, I'm just going to take off almost all the paint here, just so that again is just straight earth red. That's up to you. You can completely just work on white canvas, which might be easier for some of this, but personal taste, just a little bit of a tone to it.
So second question, I think you're kind of answering it. There's no requirement to tone the canvas?
None. That becomes a matter of taste. So I can now tell that I am painting on an oil primed surface, meaning I used sorry, I'm really trying to figure out why this isn't locking into place for me. There we go. And how I can tell is by when I wipe away, I can really wipe it away. It's not absorbing very well. If it was just gesso, it would be absorbing quite a bit faster. And it won't matter too much, especially since I'm just gonna get this painting started. And then I'm gonna let it dry, and we're gonna do part 2, you know, like we did last time, next week. So this is just me breaking this in to its big shapes. So now I've got that kind of nice surface to work on. It's going to be fairly slick. I'm going to give myself a couple notes as I kind of break it down, just so I know where things are. One, this. So this isn't quite halfway. I also noticed you guys on a couple of your paintings, horizon lines were not exactly straight. There was a couple of them where it felt like it was definitely kind of leaning to the right side. I don't have a real clear horizon line in this. And in fact, it's kind of a little bit of a rolling hill shape, but I still want to make sure that it's not leaning. So I can grab a T-bar or whatever else. And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna cover this, but this will just kind of give me good guidelines to but it's amazing how many times I use the big rulers on my paintings, both for, lots of things. Okay, my road, I'm going to have it coming to about here. So I'm just giving myself a couple quick notes so I'm not moving things all over all the time. Top of these trees. Bottoms of those trees. Quickly give them a 1, 2. So it's not halfway. but it's pretty close. So the halfway line, and actually in this edit, I do have my silos are pretty close to halfway. So I'm gonna have to move them over a little bit. So I should have done that digitally. So a lot of things I didn't quite measure or, check as well as I could have. So I'm looking for just big abstract shapes. All right, so this big shape in here hopefully kind of equals this big tree here, this big dark shape here. So now I'm gonna jump over to these trees on this line here. I'm gonna try and figure out exactly where I want them to go. I want them to overlap the trees in the background, but I also don't want them to completely block the view. I also noticed that these two little trees here are exactly the same height. So I'm going to differentiate those. And because I want to read into here a little more, into here, I'm going to actually chop that tree quite a bit. Again, these aren't the right answer. It's not how this painting needs to be. It's just a choice I'm making now. Okay, so this big interesting shape, hopefully interesting shape, equals this dark shape. I know for some people that this almost like hurts their feelings. Like, oh, he's just simplifying it so much. It's almost like cheating. Why isn't he just getting in there and getting the detail? I know you guys don't feel that way. You're all too clever and smart and understand what I'm after here. But now I'm just going to do the big dark shape back here. But for some people, and I know this, teaching painting in a way is like teaching how's the magic trick done, right? I'm bringing this opening over this way a little bit so that there's a little more space back here. Now I gotta be careful. I just made these background trees back here following this shape too completely. So I'm gonna move that over. Like that, so that this right? So I'm breaking that up so that it's not just a replication of the shape underneath it. Like if I was doing this and I wanted to introduce bushes, down here, like a line of bushes, I wouldn't put the bushes like this, right? It would just mimic that. So I want to off center them. If I had them, I'm not going to have them, but the cool thing about toning the canvas a little bit though, is my ability to just kind of do this now. Again, I don't care if it gets a little messy and sketchy because I'm going to paint over it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and bring in a couple other little shapes. So this line comes down here because there is this little bump where the road goes over the hill, and then there's another little hill that the road just climbs over real quickly here as well. And I like that that has this other little bush back here. So there's a bush on that line. These guys belong on this line. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bigger brush, a very big brush here, size 12. and I'm going to fill in these big dark shapes. I'm going to start by doing them as a no tan. I can bring the road in as well. The road is going to be a little bit trickier of a drawing. So hang with me as I try to make sure I get my angles and movement. And this road that's going back here, I think I'm actually going to turn it so it's aiming the other direction. So it's kind of going back behind there. So get rid of that line. Here, I'll just start again so it's not so messy. So again, there's this hill. There's a little bit of a hill. The road's kind of just going over it a little bit. And I'm also going to bring it back over here. Cool. Grab my big brush. I'm going to make this basically as dark as I can. The whole thing. I'm ignoring the light side to start with. If I wanted to, like, save myself a little bit of effort and stuff down the road, or if I was going to be painting into this very quickly, again, this big shape here, let me get rid of these lines so they're not confusing. This big shape represents these dark trees. I'm just going to fill it all in dark, ignoring the light side. But if you were going to paint faster, weren't going to be letting it dry and stuff, I might be tempted to actually kind of come in, look for the light side. Again, just now I'm just breaking it into two values. So I could have my light side, my dark side. So I'll show you that real quick. I want to keep this sketching phase of it pretty thin. So there's kind of that scrubbing noise going on. So this is up to you. I just want to show you the option of if you wanted to kind of preserve your, the lighter side, you can. A lot of artists do that. So you can kind of see light side, dark side. It wouldn't be that light. Of course, I'd go in and add it, but I'm going to go super simple, and I'm just going to make a whole And I do add a little bit of paint thinner, but not much, just a little bit to make my paint a little bit faster. I'm not really trying to thin it out too much. I'm letting my scrubbing kind of thin it out for me. Okay, one big dark shape representing that big dark shape. Now I'm going to come back to these. The earth red is a fast matte color, so this would be dry enough to paint on probably tomorrow. You could be doing this with your acrylics if you wanted to speed up if you want to paint over acrylics. You just want to keep your acrylics kind of thin a little bit so that your paint can have a nice bond. All right, so now we've got two big dark shapes, right? I bring in this little bush that's on top of the hill. There's a little tree here, but I actually don't really like it. So I'm cut that down. Bring in my darks of my road. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to speak up. I can paint and talk and answer questions, hopefully.
So Michael, if you had a painting that's just a blue sky with clouds, would you go ahead and do the underpainting with the earth red?
I mean, I can cover every inch of this, no problem. So yeah, I could, like, because my sky is my lightest shade. Give me 1/2 second and I'm gonna go ahead and add a tiny bit of white to these further back ones because I want them just a touch lighter so that they go back into space. So I'll have overlapping. I've also added a little more blue to my mix, so it'll cool down. I'm still contemplating this shape here. Don't quite love it. I like to play up my values and my shadows. So what I'm going to be looking at is the darks in the shadow areas. I kind of make a mistake of that, not explaining that very well, but that's what I will use to generally give my things a sense of depth and perspective, is the darks in the shadows of the objects. So my lights and my trees could be almost the same way back here as they are here, as long as my shadow, oh, it's hard to see you guys, sorry. The shadows are lighter, cooler blue, or whatever colors I'm playing up. Again, I normally wouldn't be using white. I would have just kind of put it on and then wiped it back a little bit to show my sense of depth. But since I'm going to let it dry, I can use some whites here. Also got a couple little bushes. can bring down a little bit below the horizon. Okay, so my silos in my photo are, I bet you, just about smack dab in the middle. If I kind of measure them, measure from one side, measure to, oh my God, they're right in the middle. The middle of my canvas is right there. So I don't want my silos probably there. I think I'm not sure which way I want to move them. Or maybe I put, like I did in the picture, maybe I even add that third one to off center them a little bit. All right, when I squint my eyes, I do have kind of a little mid-tone grass area here. And kind of an important where the lines change from the stripes over. So I can give myself a little bit of information, but that's really about it. I mean, that's about how basic I can go with just big, light, big shapes that really help give me my roadmap, my building blocks, as it were. Okay, so real quickly, I'm just going to come through and get rid of sky, at least quite a bit more, making it lighter. So I just took a tiny bit of paint thinner. I dipped my paper towel in there. Not too much because I don't want it to run. I don't want it big drops going down and doing crazy things. After I hit it with the paint thinner, it is taking off some. You can kind of see that. But I'll just take a clean paper towel with no paint thinner and wipe that up, getting it back to its drier.
Can you do that even after it's dry?
Not very well. I don't think so. I would hope not, actually. If I was able to come in and wipe away my paint when it was dry, it probably didn't have a very good bond. All right, my friends. So the truth is, I'm going to move the camera just a touch so we can get a better angle on it. The truth is, that looks basically, again, it's almost like painting for dummies. It's kind of quite simple. But can you see how with just that information now, I could come back in. Imagine that this was the right, the colors, but I can come in now. And imagine it was dry too. I was a little more patient. I can come right over the top and start bringing in my lighter tree shapes. Right? Or I could take my paper towel and bring in my lighter tree shapes if I wanted to. I can wait for it to dry and do it with my paint. I can do it now just to kind of give myself, again, that roadblock or big shapes. And the truth is, if I'm going to keep painting into it, what I would have probably done, see if I got to grab a big brush real quick. Gotta remember where I hid my big brushes. Anyways, so if I wanted to keep painting in it, I would just take a big brush. This is a crazy one. And I would just quickly, I'm gonna go ahead and put those darks back in as if I hadn't taken them out. Clean the white off the brush. Oh yeah, I forgot the camera's been moved. So I'm cleaning my brush. I'm gonna get back to my darks for this. I'm gonna fill that tree back in. Anyways, if I wanted to get in and paint over this quickly and wanted to not have it so sketchy as it is right now, I can take my big brush and just by simply dragging it down, eliminate a lot of the glare. And it kind of makes it a little more cohesive. I don't care if it makes some mess around the edges a little bit. I can already feel this painting tacking up, which is nice. I mean, I could probably be painting back into it in no time. Let me go ahead and darken this back here. In my photo with the clouds, which is where I kind of went back to, I took out the whole mountain. I could bring it back a little bit if I want.
Michael,
Yes.
when you put color in this painting, where would you start?
In the darks.
In the darks, just bringing in greens to the darks, or?
Whatever colors I want. Yeah, I generally will paint from dark to light. It's just easier to lighten than it is to darken with oil paints. Kind of the opposite of watercolors. So that's kind of an interesting thing. It may, may be different for you, but as a general rule, you hear oil painters painting from their darks to light. So basically, probably if I was going to come back in and start, I mean, I've already got some nice darks, but I may, let's pretend I was mixing up my colors. I would probably look into my shadows and say, yeah, what colors are my shadows? Build those up and then go to I could probably just go to my lights so that I'm keeping it. And then where the shadows and the lights meet is where I would have some mids and I would just kind of bind those. I would probably want 3 values in most of the surfaces and most things, and that will help it to turn in form towards the light from the shadow side, this being the structure, towards the light side. And that will help me the most generally. That's it's not like once I've done my darks, I can't go back. But generally with oil paintings, it's from dark to light works best. I'm also going to come through and look at my shapes that I've got and say, are they interesting? Are they exciting? Is there something I could be doing that's more interesting? I still don't love this shape on top of this shape. So I'm trying to figure out what could I do to make it more interesting.
Michael, this is Kim. Going back to where to start. I'm a watercolorist and pastelist first. So my brain is having a hard time not starting with the background, i.e. the sky, because then you'll have to put trees. I mean, if you do your dark trees first, then you're going to have to weirdly paint sky around it. Is that a thing, or is it just my brain having a cow?
No, a lot of people do that kind of from back to forwards. And there are times when I will do that. And I sometimes put my sky in just simply because my sky dictates all the colors, everything else, whatever my light color is, will dictate the other colors. So yeah, there's a lot of times I'll kind of put in my sky. I just won't be too attached. I would usually put it in kind of lightly. I wouldn't, do a finished sky because again, I'm trying not to think about objects, and that includes sky. I'm just trying to think of big lighter area, mid-tone, slightly darker mid-tone, dark, a lighter area, but it's not nearly as light as anything else. It's just dark, lighter than the dark area. So I'm just thinking values, shapes, and colors. So that's all this is. So there's no reason I can't put it in at any point because it's just shapes, values, and colors. And one reason I will often do I'll kind of rough in my sky, give myself kind of my idea, maybe my underlying colors, my temperatures, so that again, that light that's up here in the sky is also affecting it's hitting these grasses, it's hitting the side of the silos. That color, if it's warmer, is warming up the side of the tree. You can have cool light. So if it's a cool light, maybe casting a light that's lightening the side of the tree, but cooling it, and my shadows may feel warmer. Yes, there's a lot of questions to ask about that. Light's not always warm. You can have a blue sky casting a cool light, or on an overcast day, like maybe we have outside. Oh, it's very, very overcast. You can have very cool light. And it's funny on really overcast days, you actually, if you kind of squint your eyes and look into the shadows, they'll actually feel warmer. And that's just a contrast thing. I think I can lay out my colors and keep painting. That was so fast. I expected that to take quite a bit longer. I'm trying to look at it and decide, are there shapes I can make more interesting? I'm looking for tangents. I'm really just kind of skimming my eye around it. And again, this is the easier time for me to kind of edit out some shapes, see if they're interesting, see if I've got repetition of form too much. Is this too close to this? And I don't know, this breaks up pretty nicely there. This is kind of a big, boring shape, so maybe I chop into it a little. Make it a little more irregular. This, now I can look into my little holes underneath there, see if they're interesting and different than each other. Yeah, you guys, that's all as far as I expect you to get. If you want to get a little further, if you want to create a light and a dark within your forms, that's fine. It kind of helps. Plus, wherever you wipe away will dry a little faster. So you can get into that, especially with your lights, because you don't want them being contaminated as much by these darks. So if I try to paint my lights over darks that are still kind of too wet, yeah, see how that just gave it form all of a sudden over here? Let's do the same over here. Again, my light's still coming from this side.
Michael, I just have to say that those two round trees in the foreground look like a minion butt.
Right here. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's change that. Let's make this one taller. And let's bind them. A little better. Yeah, always looking for butts. Always looking for things that can be interpreted poorly. If I can be a borderline a little bit crass, I'll tell you a story about that. So if you're very delicate, please turn your mic off or your sound off for 1 second. But I was doing a plein air event, so it's 3 days, go out and you paint as many. They actually stamp the back of your canvases so that they know that you painted them during those 3 days. And it's competitive, but it's also lots of fun. And there was a house that I was staying in with about 5 other artists, all guys. And then there was a house next door with a bunch of ladies staying in it. And, we would get together in the evenings and drink some beer or wine and look at our paintings from the day. And it was really fun. We just kind of line them up in the garage along the floor, leaning up against the wall. And it was just the guys and myself, and we were looking at everybody's paintings, and we got to mine, and I can probably just describe it. It was 2 round trees with a poplar growing up through the middle of them. So very symmetrical. And I totally 1000% did not notice it while painting it. It looked very inappropriate. And I was like looking at it and I said, what do you think I should name this? And one of the gentlemen goes, Morning Wood. And we had a good laugh. And then the ladies came over, and I hadn't changed it or fixed it. And, definitely was eager to get in there and do some rearranging of shrubbery. And a lady walked around kind of quickly, just glancing at everybody's paintings. And she turns to us and she points to my painting and she goes, I don't know what it is, but I just love this painting. And one of the guys is like, you don't know what it is? And once she figured it out, it was pretty funny. But anyways, that's a good reminder for me to always be kind of aware of inopportune things. In fact, the 2 silos with the tall, skinny tree growing up right between them straight up kind of reminded me of that. So that was one of the quick first things I edited out of the reference photo. There's a lot of things that can come out looking like breasts. There's a lot of things that come out looking like butts, especially if you're dealing with a lot of round shrubs. So unless it's purposeful, that goes into our artistic license, you always have permission to get rid of the butts. So you can send me an email after class if you think I was stepped over the bounds there a little bit too much, but it's a good story. Hopefully you all learn from my mistakes. Aha, I don't like that these trees, there's another little butt going on here, are exactly the same size either. And you know what? See how these are lining up here, this dark tree and this? I'm just gonna create one tree. I don't need those trees maybe back there. Maybe this tree, I can make just slightly smaller maybe so that it's not the same height as these trees. Maybe that will do it. Yeah, it's just asking questions, what don't I like? What can I do about it? What don't I like? What can I do about it? Hopefully you guys can see the kind of the beginning of some form. There's a nice tree right here to the right of the silos. I can go ahead and bring that in because that brings a tree that's not exactly in line. Bring its trunk down. And then it's casting a shadow. I don't know if you can see that. Give it more paint.
That was a nice addition.
It just kind of breaks it up a little bit. I'm creating something that's in there. I could even, there's a separation in the trail, in the field here. I could add some bushes there along that separation. We'll cast shadows if I want. The silos are also casting shadows. Create a dark side as well as light side. It's kind of going to create an umbrella almost, kind of overlap that silo a little bit. These trees come down a little bit over here. I can decide if I like that. This is just massive, right? This huge lump up here. So I'm going to make that hopefully more interesting. Let's break that up a little and give it some form, not just a big solid lump. Normally we're grooming our trees so that they look cleaner and better. But a lot of times in landscape painting, we draw them so clean and perfect that it's nice to come in and make him a little bit more irregular. All right, you guys, any more questions? I guess I will go ahead and put out my paint and start painting on this. I think I'll be able to keep moving forward. I just don't want to waste the last part of your day. This just went faster than I thought it was going to go, which is a nice change. Any questions about design, composition, and about this? First off, let me ask you, and I want to hear back from you. Which way do you think you like approaching a painting better? The wiping away, or does this way seem a little more instinctual to you?
This way seems more instinctual.
Doesn't it? Yeah, this is the way
Building it.
I would feel is more instinctual.
I don't think you left subtraction. You just added addition.
Yeah, and now I'm kind of coming in and subtracting a little bit. You know, it's still mobile. That's true. Yeah, I didn't really. And that's what I like. I always say is that it's kind of a hybrid. My real painting style is still just kind of a hybrid. This just allows me to kind of come in, finesse a little bit, decide, you know, allows me to step back and keep observing and just saying, you know, is that interesting? Is that interesting? Is that helping or hurting? Is that,
It really interested me the way you dropped the light in at various places.
yeah, and those are just kind of reminders, aren't they? Yeah, so that's it. That would theoretically be the end of class. We have another 40 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working towards the next stage. Quick question, and we'll take a vote on this. Do you guys think I should do this as a value painting? Because we're not dealing with color. I can deal with this as values, lights, darks, but add in, you know, color, add more paint to it as values, kind of that tonalist style. That's the thing. Actually, you know what? Let's jump back to that. I wanted to talk to you guys about tonalism. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay if I leave the painting there? Okay, good. Because I don't want to overwhelm and I don't want to ask too much. So
Michael, this is Carol. I have one quick question about that middle hill that you put in between the tree clumps.
yep.
We were talking about simplification, but that seemed like why was that needed?
It wasn't. I'll probably take it back out. I just kind of wanted to show if I wanted the hill that I could put it in there as a big shape, but it's so close to the sky in value. If I squint my eyes at the reference photo, it all but disappears. That's up to you. This, again, there's no rules on this stage at all. These are notes for you. You could literally, here, let's go back. I could literally be over here. Right? These are just notes for me. I'm gonna cover all this up. I could put as much or as little information as I need. What I'm trying to show you is that you don't need as much as you think you need. In fact, when we try to do too much at the beginning, we're painting around things. We're not usually building up, we're just protecting. And there's not, I hate painting when I'm trying to protect an area. Just breaking up my edges a little bit.
So Michael, this is Stacy. I have another question since we're still there.
Yes,
I got into a little bit of trouble when I was trying to put paint on this first layer it was so viscous, you know, it was so liquidy that I had a little bit of trouble with that.
Yeah.
So I thought to just, you know, just to let it sit for a day and then it'd be a better painting surface. Do
Yeah.
you have that problem or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Like
I
now,
hesitate going on top of this really, you know, gamma-soli kind of layer.
yeah. So, are you talking about the underpainting and then trying to paint on top of that?
Right. Well, what you have going right now, you know, I mean, I could see it, but there's a lot of paint on there and
Yeah.
a
So,
lot of it is really liquidy. And I find that when I do that, I have trouble with it, you know? The
yeah.
paint seems to get absorbed into all that liquidy, lovely stuff we have on right now. So,
Absolutely. So you want to not use so much paint thinner, for one.
right.
You definitely don't want a very slick surface. I have a slightly slick surface.
Okay.
Like, in fact, this is already dry down here.
Yeah. Okay.
Hardly. Let's see if I take a dry paper towel to it. Yeah, there's a lot of times where I'll tone my canvas, and then I'll go to the computer and do
Okay. Yeah.
a lot of times I will tone my canvas with a little bit of acrylic paint, just add a little water to my acrylic paint, paint it on, wipe it back off, and then it's dry in no time. I also will mix a little bit of color in with my gesso. I think I talked a little bit about that last week. Sometimes, and you do not need a tinted canvas. You can paint straight on white. That's not a problem at all. I just wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah. I generally paint on a tinted canvas. Let me just pull this big painting that I'm working on now. I just drew in. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn my camera to show you what I'm working on. And this is a much more complicated, sorry about motion sickness here.
Mhm.
This is a much more, I lost it. Sorry, I unplugged it. I did that last week too, or 2 weeks ago. Turning back on.
Michael, why do you like painting on tone? Is it just a better roadmap for you?
I guess white is just tough. All right, well, I lost that. I'll change cameras and show it to you with the other one. Sorry about that. I guess it just, again, like a lot of things, it just kind of becomes what you're used to. And there was a long time where why is it not coming over here? Huh. Sorry about that, guys. For some reason, I may have to leave and come back. I don't know. Ah, I see. It just said stop video. Okay, here we go. There we go. Huh. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. So I'm just going to use this. So this is a big painting. It's 4 feet tall. And there's going to be all these calla lilies in the shade in the forest. I don't know how to show it. So actually everything that's not kind of a calla lily is very, very, very dark. And then that's backlit. And the light's going to be coming through, streaming across, and just capturing the edges of these calla lilies. And the calla lilies are transparent, so they'll be glowing from the back. So all these trees will kind of be silhouetted and backlit, and same with the leaves. So you can see some of the shadow areas that I'm kind of hinting at, where, you know, cast shadows. But anyways, I went ahead and drew that out more a little bit tighter than I normally would, just
Mhm.
because I want the calla lilies to create this kind of a feeling of a path going back towards the opening of the light. So in that instance, I did go ahead and do more drawing than I normally do. A lot of times it's just kind of the rough in big shapes. And what I'll do now with that is I'm going to come back in and color in my big dark areas. So I
Okay.
still have the same thing, but my calla lilies are a little more described. So that's me hedging my bets a little bit. So again, it's just as I approach my paintings, I'm just kind of like, what's the best way to do this? I have like 3 or 4 different methods. The one way I don't do it is the way I started off, though, is where, you know, and this is just because I didn't know better and I came from a world of drawing and cartooning and animation, is I would just take my pencil and I would just start drawing a really good drawing on there, like fully detailed and rendered out, you know, like a drawing I was really happy with. And then I'm paint over that. And
You covered up. Yeah. That's
I just
horrible.
wasted
Yeah.
all this time. And my painting was timid because I was trying to
Yeah.
protect this beautiful drawing. You know, I was trying to make the painting worthy of the drawing. And I liked drawing better at that period than I liked painting. So it was this
Yeah.
kind of internal conflict of once I just started letting go of drawing. And I don't enjoy drawing lines and then coloring them in. I don't think of that as painting. Think of that as coloring. So for me, painting is building up the form, building up the big shapes, and then getting into the detail and the little shapes. And all of that comes. You guys all witnessed that last week with your paintings, that you didn't need every little detail. If you wanted light on your trees and you know, light on your water, you added that towards the end, and it came. You were able to build towards it. It's a stupid metaphor, but it's always been in my head. You know, when I was a little kid eating Lucky Charms cereal, and sometimes if you're not paying attention, you end up with a half a bowl with no more marshmallows left. And now I treat painting like, no, you've got to preserve the marshmallows. You've got to preserve the detail. That's the fun part. The detail is the fun part. You got to save it. It's what you earn by finishing the rest of your bowl of cereal. You get to eat the marshmallows at the end. You get to do the big splashes of color, the big splash of light, either reflections or whatever it is. The parts that really sell the painting and make it sing, I earn those by doing the rest of the work. And if I do it too early, I just end up protecting it. What happens a lot, like when I teach other classes where we're doing like portraiture and stuff, this is very easy for people to understand, is there's a lot of painters who will just get in and doing the portrait and will paint the best eye they've ever painted. And nothing else is done. So now for the rest of the painting, all they're doing is trying to defend that eye. And it's a horrible way to build up a painting. I don't want to say it's the wrong way, because you can go on YouTube and watch a lot of painters that literally start in one corner of their painting with no drawing and just really detailed and just slowly move their way across the painting. No disrespect, but I generally think those people are somewhat autistic. I think that that's a kind of a different gift that they have where they can visualize the whole thing. It exists there. It exists already. Now they're just filling it in. It's like Michelangelo's saying of the statue already exists. I just have to remove the parts that aren't it. But that's not how painting has ever worked for me. I do that, my dimensions are off, my perspective is off, my values are off, my colors aren't relating. So I like to work on kind of the whole thing, giving myself the roadblocks, the building blocks, the foundation, and everything else. All right, so real quickly, you guys, I just want to show you one of my favorite places. Real quick to the OSA page. You guys all see that? I went ahead and posted links to my Pinterest. If you guys are not on, I don't know what that is. If you guys are not on Pinterest and are game for one more thing to get lost in and waste all your time, Pinterest is fantastic. I'm going to show you really quickly, but I went ahead and I posted links to 3 different Pinterest pages that I've made. One for tonalism, one for Barbizon School, and one for Luminism. They're considered 3 different schools, but to me, they're all very, very, very similar. I have that page open. Are you guys seeing a Pinterest page now? Are you still seeing the Facebook page?
I'm still seeing
No.
Facebook.
Facebook.
Okay, let me stop sharing that and share screen and Pinterest. How about now?
I see Pinterest.
Yes.
Okay, so does everybody know what Pinterest is? Please speak up if you don't. I'll just give you a quick synopsis.
Synopsis.
Synopsis. Okay, so what I think of Pinterest, and I think it's even why it's named that, because they're called pins. Every picture you post is a pin. So think of it as like a gigantic cork board where you can pin up all your favorite things. So a lot of people do recipes or construction or DIY things. For me, it's just artwork that inspires me. So if I go back to, how do I get back to my page? This is my main page, or what I also think of it as is just folders. So here's my main folder, and this shows all my pins. If you can believe it, I have 7,728 pictures I have saved in here. So if you want to see all of them, you can go here. And that's just like, imagine I just threw all the pictures that I like out on the floor and just asked you to look at them. Or you can say, okay, well, Mike was planning to go to Croatia, and here's a board or a folder with 22 pictures of Croatia. Trip to Tetons. We don't care about my trips, but we care about are like, well, I did it by artist. So there's an Anders Zorn, there's Edgar Payne, there's sculptures that I like. And then there's just even just photos of landscapes that are kind of inspiring, you know, and you'll kind of notice some themes going on of things I like. And so anyways, if I click one, let's just say, man, those trees are cool. In fact, that kind of speaks to the picture I'm going to do with the lilies. I will click it, it becomes big. But what's neat is this thing says, well, if you like that, then you're also going to like possibly some of these other pictures that are in the same theme. And so it's a really neat way to do it. And I can say, I can go up to the little magnifying glass, and I could look up whatever I want. Charcoal art, Polaroid pictures, I can type in whatever I want, and a whole bunch of stuff comes up. You also get to share your pins with other people. So a number of artists and myself share boards. If you ever see one, let's see if there's any. These are all secret ones to me, like fitness. That's embarrassing. I don't want to share that. And other ones I have like things that I like, but I don't care if other people know that I like them. And you can even put in your own photos and stuff and make them private or share them. Oh, here's one I made for this class, OSA design. So this was, as I was thinking about the class before I even started teaching or met you guys, I was just thinking up different things about design that I could teach. You know, was I going to teach you first abstraction, or like these are some of my favorite nearly no tan paintings. David Sharp and Charlie Hunter are 2 of my favorite living artists. We almost lost David Sharp last year to cancer, but luckily he's still around doing okay. I love his work. It's so borderline on the abstract. Charlie Hunter, I just love his simplicity. He took the idea of no tan. Let's just click on Charlie and see what it suggests. Isn't that just gorgeous? I mean, the abstraction, and look how the roof gets lost, but it's still implied. And oh man, he's just so smart. Here's another one of his that he does. He does very tonal stuff. He uses squeegee, water miscible oil paints on a slick board and Q-tips and toothpicks to paint. And he's a hilarious guy. I've watched him demo a number of times. He does add color sometimes. But anyways, just like I'm showing you, you get lost, you go down the rabbit hole. If you double click the big image, it takes you to the website where it came from. So you can really go down. Let's go back to my page and our page. So yeah, just a whole bunch of different design elements. I wanted to talk about, just again, almost no tan. I just love some of these old black and whites and how clever they were with their negative space and everything else. There's just, it's really dangerous for me. Here's some of the still lifes that I put on our page. Again, a lot of black and white photos, just because I wanted to show you how powerful lack of color can be. And then some more abstracts. Franz Klein, I'm sure you guys have all heard of him. He's really important to study in both just value studies, abstraction, and no-tan. I never really liked him until the last couple of years, and now I'm kind of infatuated with him. All sorts of things I pulled out, just different design elements, and then limited color. So that was a page I just made literally as I was just brainstorming. How do I present this to you guys in a slightly different way? Because some of you guys were in my last design class, so I don't want to just duplicate my class, but I want to make sure I'm getting the important things. So if you're new to Pinterest or whatever, you can literally just come to my page and choose from 7,000 pictures. I want to introduce you guys to this artist, Russell Chatham. He passed away last year. I adore his work to no end. It is so simplistic, but yet so haunting and so beautiful. I find myself looking at his work a lot, referencing, this is like the pinnacle of the most amount and the least amount of information. It's the pinnacle of a poem to me. It's not maybe the work I want to make, but it's the mindset that I kind of really like. Anyways, so maybe you'll learn about some artists that you didn't know about. I want to take you to my tonalism, and there's tonalism, 243 pins on there. And you guys are going to very quickly see why I wanted to show you guys tonalism this week. Tonalism, Barbizon, and Luminism are, again, they're considered different schools. They have slightly different things, but they look very similar to me. But you can see that it's all about strong values and kind of a simplification. A lot of silhouettes almost. A couple of my paintings hiding in here. I try to trick people. Haha, you have to look at mine if you want to look at tonalism. There's one of my paintings there. And I also like seeing my paintings kind of intermixed, and how do they stand up again with other paintings? Like, do I notice them? Are they very glaringly different? Or do they kind of belong in this family? Do they, that's actually a photo I took of my daughter and her friend that I really like at the beach. But anyways, if you guys want to look through some of these Barbizon, tonalism, and luminous paintings, and just kind of look, and I mean, look at this as far as design. I wonder why it's not staying up. Huh. Don't know where it just went. But here's one I did where it was just about simplicity and about trying to tell a kind of a relationship story between just a couple elements. And the idea of that came about by looking at other people's paintings and kind of like, how can I tell a lot with a little? Just talk about beautiful lines and interesting, big, strong shapes, little delicate shapes, cool colors, warm colors, you know, how do they all go together? It's just, it's just such a great way for me to learn and observe. And then a neat thing to ask yourself, and this is something I haven't brought up yet. When my wife and I first started collecting artwork, you know, we were poor and we were going to galleries because that was my job. You know, I am looking for galleries for me to be in. And we would go in galleries and we would play a game with each other where at the end, when we were leaving, we would ask each other, which is the painting, if you could have one of the paintings out of that gallery, which one would it be? And, you know, we would answer and then we would talk about it. And it was really cool for us to start developing our taste by saying, not only what was it that I liked, you know, was it subject matter that drew me in? Was it the colors that drew me in? Was it the brushwork? Was it the design? Was it the theme? Was it the mood? What was it that drew me in? And by doing that, I started to learn what I liked, what excited me about paintings. You know, for me, I've always liked this kind of luminous, softer, you know, I like tonal work. You guys, you know, your Pinterest boards may be very bright and colorful, or you may like some of the more things like I like. Just this painting always blows me away. And so you can start making these boards of paintings that you like, you know, and maybe don't start even asking questions, just grab 100 paintings that you like, and then go back and look through your board and say, why is it? What's the common thread through these? Or, you know, maybe you like different types. Maybe you have an impressionist section and a landscape section and a, you know, really colorful, bright, decorative section. I have Art Nouveau. I love Art Nouveau. I don't include it in very many of my paintings, but I just love Art Nouveau. I think it's, you know, beautiful lines and amazing design and all of that, you know, strong contrast. I'm drawn towards strong contrast, but at the same time, very moody. You know, what is it? What's the theme that keeps going across? This is another artist you guys will probably want to look up. I adore his work. Muccillo is his last name. Renato, Renato, is his first name. He takes it, what I like, to another level. He adds a lot of detail. He uses very tiny brushes, which I don't really care about. I love his work and I love the mood and the themes and the feeling in them, but I don't really care to chase that level of detail. So by looking at that and studying him, you know, I can ask those questions. I'm kind of somewhere in between. Dennis Sheehan's the opposite, you know, a lot of the same feel, same mood, but very loose and very gestural. And I really like his work too. So, you know, we don't come up with our own style. We borrow it from a whole bunch of different artists. You know what I mean? It's kind of like jazz. We're just going to borrow elements of this and elements of that. And once you start figuring out all the different things that you like, the colors, the, you know, the lights and the darks, the themes, the moods, maybe these are all too depressing and you're like, man, I could not live with those. They're all too sad. I need, you know, bright and happy. That's great. Paint bright and happy. Paint the things. We're stuck kind of in these kind of gloomier tonalist paintings just because that's where we're at right now. But let's see. Let's go to California Impressionists. I have a big section of that. Does that make sense, you guys? Anybody use Pinterest for their artwork and for preferences? Stacy does. Anybody else?
I do all the time.
Who's that?
Lori.
Yeah, good. It's really fun. I mean, it's dangerous. You can definitely get lost on there.
It's my rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yep, same.
But I do feel like it's a healthy one. I mean, I even have, you know, folders on here that are literally just about studio organization and stuff like that. Whole thing on trees. I thought I was going to do miniature trees for a while, different vineyards. I even
It
have
does
one-
fill your head with all kinds of notions.
Yeah,
that you can do.
painting
Yeah.
materials, just different supplies that I like. Yeah, here's studio space ideas. You know, there's my easel, actually, the hues. Different ideas for setups, kind of dream spaces with a great big overhead window. I always think that'd be really nice. I think the idea, you know, if I had more space, you know, who doesn't need a Picasso in there? Anyways, lots of stuff. And it's a rabbit hole. I learn about so many Russian painters. I even have a whole section of Russian painters that I share with another artist friend of mine. And he's constantly sending me pictures that just random paintings I love. And so, yeah, if I just clicked on that,
Michael,
I have one of my own. Yes.
this is Lorianne. On YouTube, actually, if you type in the type of paintings you like, you can get like hundreds of paintings that will just scroll on your screen of Russian painters and different artists.
I did
It's
not know.
fantastic.
I will on YouTube. So you just type in, let's just say Impressionism, and all of a sudden it would just Impressionism. Are they videos or just it's YouTube's put this thing together?
Nope, it's just individual paintings that stay on the screen for about 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
I had no
And
idea.
it's just a phantasmagoria of like just beautiful, beautiful work.
Fantastic. Yeah, I will definitely check that out. That's so neat. Yeah, so as I'm scrolling down here, there, you know, lots of different stuff, lots of different eras. This is just paintings I love. These are ones where I don't want to think about it. I just want to save them for later to look through. Evidently like that one a lot, put it on there twice. But there definitely becomes kind of a theme, a feeling a little bit. Not completely, some odd ones, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Anyways, I urge you guys to do that. I urge you to visit my page. I think, yeah, it says I get 138,000 monthly views on my page, which means just people looking at all the 7,000 pictures I've shared, which doesn't do anything for me. But it's kind of fun to know that, you know, I'm putting something out there that people are liking and wanting to look at, and we're just sharing it. Oh, and you can write comments on them, on pictures, and say, yeah, you know, I really like this, or have you checked out this person, or whatever else. So anyways, great fun. Oh, here's a new artist I just discovered, you guys. This person's blowing my mind. Chester Berry. It's a lady, I believe, out of England, or Hester Berry. So strange. Just such juicy, crazy brushwork. And it's almost messy feeling to me. But really, I'm really enjoying looking at that. It's kind of strange work. You can see a little bit of pulling away the work as well. But anyways, I really appreciate other people's work like that. One other artist I want to type in really quick to show you that just blows my mind. It's a guy named Bato, B-A-T-O. He's a Russian. And it is the most nearly abstract, crazy, beautiful mess. I just adore this painting. It is so simple and so minimal, and I just love it. Kind of haunts my dreams sometimes. But just how much he gets away with so little. You know what I mean? It's just 3 colors and a couple sketchy lines. And you can totally tell what you're looking up at a top lit church. So anyways, I get my inspiration all over the place. From tons of different artists. And, you know, sometimes it can make my brain explode. And of course, every time I get on here, I'm like, oh, I want to paint like that artist. Oh, I want to paint like that artist. But it all gets thrown through the same funnel. And ends up just becoming another tool or another thing, and it all gets put through my hand. So it ends up being my, my own stuff. But I think it's fun to look and explore and to learn. Just look at this. So subtle and quiet and beautiful. And look, we know that this tablecloth ends at the floor. Doesn't need to tell us. We know that chair, back there, just how little can he say and still tell you enough? If that's not poetry, not that it's for everybody, and not that, I even want to paint like that, but I sure do appreciate the restraint and the thought that goes into it. Great. Well, we have 8 minutes left, you guys. Again, I apologize. I went too fast. Last week we went long by about 40 minutes. This class went a little bit quick, but we really did cover everything I had, which I thought was going to be far too much. Any questions, recommendations, things you want to share? I can even do a quick critique on a couple of the paintings. If you want, go back to our page.
This is Michelle.
Michelle.
I have trouble now that I'm really enjoying what you've been teaching us and taking away and that soft, glowy look. Then when it comes time to go add some color back in, how do I approach that fearlessly?
Oh, can you say it again?
So it's that thing of wanting to protect that soft, glowy look, but now I'm going to add color and brush strokes. And how do I approach that?
Yeah, boy. Okay. I'm going to be honest. Hard truth. Some of your guys' value studies are better than your color versions. That's what happens. I kill a lot of paintings by overworking them. There's just no way of knowing when you've overworked. Edgar Payne has a saying, overwork every painting and then step back, or, go back a step. Because you just can't know. You can't know if it's underbaked or overbaked until you framed it and put it on its wall and it's done. Then it is what it is. So we have to be willing to sacrifice our paintings to continue to grow. Your other option is to paint two. Save the first one and do it again. There's a lot of times I showed you guys that video where I did 3 paintings at a time. Do 3 paintings at a time. Do 4 paintings at a time. There's nothing wrong with that. You can stop at every stage. You know what I mean? And then decide after that. So you have 4 paintings at 4 different stages and decide, you know what? I like this stage. My glowy style came about because of these underpaintings that I did. That whole story I told you about, just doing all those design paintings over and over for my friend Don Bishop, doing 3 a day, and realizing that the black and whites were just a little boring for me. So I started using the earth red. Then I introduced the French ultramarine. And then when I introduced the Indian yellow, all of a sudden they became these things that could kind of stand on their own. And so I don't, there is no answer. You either just be bold and go for it, knowing that to grow, you have to take risks, and that a painting's always a couple brush strokes away from being killed. The good news is they're oil paint, so we can wipe them back away a little bit, or a palette knife, scrape them away, or we let them dry and we can paint back over them. And I even showed you guys about glazing. Some of your guys' value colors, let them dry. We'll bring back in some warm glazes over the top possibly. That's just it. It's go big or go home. It's, you have to just keep painting, and you learn from the ones that don't work. If you just keep messing them up and keep getting frustrated and throwing them away, then they're worthless. Then you've not grown from your mistakes or from the unsuccessful paintings. These unsuccessful paintings can really teach you a lot. And if that a lot is, oh, I should have stopped an hour ago, so be it. That's still a lesson. And so, yeah, I just you can't fall in love with your paintings too much. I want you to love them all, but not so much that you're not willing to sacrifice them for the next painting. I think I mentioned that before, that for me, every painting, when I'm struggling, I just tell myself, it's not about this painting. This painting is about the next painting. So every painting is leading towards something else. And that way you're just not too attached. When I have something like this one, I've been actually putting off painting it for a little while until I kind of came up with some different solutions in my head and different ideas. And I redesigned some of the background and stuff. It's going to be more on the borderline fantasy, overly romantic side, but I'm fine with that for this painting. And now, I feel like I'm ready. So this one, I will be a little bit more nervous about. That's just part of the deal, versus the little ones that I can just throw together. But I don't need to be. I should still play and experiment and learn from it. Brian Mark Taylor, who's a great teacher and salesman and painter, he talks about practice versus performance. And he definitely has some paintings that are performance. Those are his commission paintings where they have to work out, right? So if you imagine like an athlete, they're practicing every day. Even before the game, they're practicing. They're warming up. They're swinging the bats. They're swinging their golf clubs, whatever it is. Painting is like that. It's 99% practice with a little bit of performance. And at your guys' levels, that goes for all of you. Even I know all of you, I know some of you are selling and are a little more advanced, but don't think of it like that. Keep practicing and keep growing. For now, you'll just learn 100 times faster than if you worry too much. It hurts. I promise you, it never stops hurting. When you watch a painting go south, it always sucks. That never stops. And it feels great when they work out really, really well. But there's paintings that work out really, really well, and you don't know why, because there's some weird black magic and it's unreplicable. So that's useless. So it's better that you understand and you learn from each painting and become a better painter that way. And if I keep talking, I have one more minute. You guys are awesome. That was a great question. I appreciate it. And there's no good answer.
I find wine helps.
Wine definitely helps. Actually, yeah. I've ended my evenings painting with wine, and I actually will probably disagree with you. It helps while you're drinking the wine, but the next morning you're kind of like, oh, maybe not as much as I thought. Puts on the wine goggles. I do, yeah. I mean, that can be true, though. A little bit of relaxing. I do have friends that I think I've told you guys about. We do a week retreat with a bunch of painters, and we go out and we do drink and draw and play art games and set up silly competitions and things like that. And it is fun, and you can definitely get out of your comfort zone. And we set up challenges for each other. You can only paint using this spatula and this stick. And a glass of wine definitely helps paint with a spatula and a stick. But that's not performance or practice. That's just play, which is also important. Remember to play.
Last class.
That's class. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate all of you. I've had so much fun with this class so far, and thank you for letting me go through the uncomfortable growth stages as I learn how to use this stuff. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
There's
Are we absolutely clear on what we're due for next week? Just out of curiosity.
I would like it to end up looking kind of like the painting where I stopped. I want your big shapes. You can decide how much detail or how little detail. You guys pick your references. You're more than welcome to use the same one as me. I don't care. Use your own. And if you want to go a little further, I think you guys kind of get an idea of where it is. I'm thinking with that one that I'm working on, because we're not dealing with color and I don't want to go into color very much. I want to continue with what we're doing. Next week, I will work on that, I'll have a lesson again at the beginning, but when I'm painting, I'm going to be thinking more tonalism, more Barbizon, more illuminated painting. So just so you know, I won't be messing with color too much. And the cool thing is with the tonalism and Barbizon styles is you can get away with quite a bit. Truthfully, people treat it like it's a sacred art form, but I actually find it, maybe because I paint that way kind of naturally, and it's what I'm drawn to, but I do find it to be a lot more forgiving actually. And since we're not worried about color and stuff as much, maybe for some of you having a limited palette might be better. You can choose what colors you want to use, but maybe not chasing the exact right color this class. Let's do color next class. And I'm actually, as soon as I hang up here, I'll be talking to Oregon Society of Artists to set up the next class. I do have a couple of small trips, so I got to figure out scheduling. But I'm really looking forward to doing a color class with you guys or whoever wants to join me for that. It's a lot of fun. And we'll just be taking this. You guys will be ahead of everybody else because you'll be taking this. A lot of people don't take design because they just read design and composition and, oh, that's the boring part of painting. I want to do the color. And color without design and composition is just not nearly as good. So you guys are going to be ahead. Cool. Mary?
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you all. And on the chat list, there is a link to Natalie put a link to her Instagram or Pinterest page, I think.
No, that's my Instagram account. I have an art history small little lesson 3 times a week because I teach art history at Brooklyn College. So
very cool.
Your Pinterest reminded me of that, and I said, if then you're all art lovers, if anyone's interested, please follow me.
I am following you right this minute, and there you are. You're followed. You now have 250 followers.
I know.
If you are on Instagram, follow me too. I lost all my followers.
Oh, have to do it now.
Yeah.
I have a painter suggestion for you guys.
What?
A painter suggestion to check out. Charles Birchfield, Burchfield. He's a painter from our local area, and he paints in watercolor, but they're just so atmospheric and really bold and beautiful, and they're of nature, but I think you guys would like them maybe.
I may have just spelt it wrong. Charles, Charles
Birchfield, Burchfield.
I spelt it right.
And you could go to the Birchfield Penny Art Center in Buffalo.
Aha, birchfieldpenny.org.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I will explore that and let you guys go and get some lunch and see if we turn on the news what craziness has happened this week, since every Wednesday something interesting has happened, whether it's a new president or whatever else. So anyways, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.